Okay, if you've seen the parrot case video, you know that I'd attempted to do that carving on this box and it completely failed. So the wood is nowhere near good enough to do any kind of painting or figuring on, and it's too dense for pyrography. It doesn't come up at all. So I'm going to completely cover it instead. So I've taken off the fittings, because these are all the hammered in things that you can't really do anything with. So I've taken them all off, and I've decided to go for some dragon scale. So I've cut a template, how that's going to come out, and I've kind of played about with a couple of bits of scrap. So I've got an idea of how these shapes will go together. So just like that. And what is fairly alarming is that after having done some math, I've worked out that you only get about a 2 centimetre square coverage per piece of leather, and I've actually gone through and worked out the area of each side, and totally comes to around about 800 individual cuts, which seems ridiculous, but that's what I'm going for. So I've gone through my my stash, and I don't really have enough to do one solid colour all the way around. So I've kind of picked them up and I've cut them into similar colours. So I've got a reddy brownish set, a tanny colour set, a green set, a white set, grey and black. So I'm going to go through in kind of a chevron design and bring that round the box as I go. So it's not going to be for the 800 because I'm not doing the ends. So I expect it's going to be around about 700 individual pieces of leather, which is quite daunting. I've cut about half of that, so we'll see where we go from here. So I'm starting on the back so that I can layer them up so they actually look like dragon scale. And I'm not haven't quite decided what I'm going to do underneath the very bottom here, so that's going to be left more or less as it is. So I'm going to start with a little bit of double-sided, just to hold them in on the bottom side of the box. And I'm going to start with one, and I'm actually going to not stick these down this time round for this row. I'm going to stick another bit of double-sided on this end. Obviously double-sided is not going to hold leather long term, it's just there to hold it in place whilst I'm fiddling about, really. So put it back enough, the midpoint there. So I'm only kind of exposing the bit that I need at this point. So I've measured across and I've got my midpoint here, and it works out that I can get 13 scales wide on this first row. So what I'm going to do is cut across the bottom of this scale, the mid part of this scale, so that I've got one on the bottom end and one on the top here. Because this is the back, I'm leery about actually joining these up, so I'm going to lay them in like that, keep them together but separated, so that when I come to actually putting the hinges and whatever on, I can just pull it apart and get on with it. Okay, so that's the first row in. Now as I'm counting up in chevrons, I'm going to start from the middle again, and this will be a 10, and that will just fit in the gap here. And I'm going to hammer these in so that each one has it's only been held in by one pin. It seems a lot, or it doesn't seem a lot, but where you've got layers of them held in like this, it should be fine. So where you've got a natural dip here between the two scales that go before, just piloting a hole, dropping in a pin. because this wood is very dense, because this kind of, there's 5 or 6 layers of ply here, so these don't go in quite straight. That's fine. I can always pull it out when I'm finished and tidy them up. So these don't tend to buckle that much when you use them. So second one in, and just make sure that you're lining up the point with the 2 corners at the bottom, and the 2 corners here are lined up as well. Okay, so I've done the first side, which was the top. So you've got a nice kind of dragon scale pattern going all the way down. I've left the opening end unfinished because I haven't decided what I'm going to do, and that kind of depends on how much of the different colours I've got left when I finish that. So now I'm starting on the other side. So where I left kind of the half scales here, I'm working in the other direction, so that will have the kind of the scales facing the right way on both sides. So that's the next bit. And I've been using double-sided just to hold things in as I hammer them. A lot of these nails are going to need helping, because I think the wood is bowing as I'm hammering. So once they're all in position, I can then build something up in the middle and actually give them a good hammering in. But for the minute they're working fine. The ends, I haven't done any kind of partial scales to fill bits in, because I'll sort that out when I do an end plate. So I'll come back to you when I've done this bit. Okay, the last time you saw this, there were a whole load of brass pins in there, but it worked out that I was spending the best part of £8 on the pins, so that was ridiculous. So I've pulled them all out, and yes, there are still holes in the leather. I'm either going to use some pyrography or stick on some Del Montes. I haven't decided what I'm doing with that yet. So I'm just finishing off the kind of middle section here, and I've used some ribbon in the first instance just to get the line straight. And now I'm using a slightly more decorated ribbon with a rose print or rose weave effect, and I'm just bringing that round and using pins to make kind of an echo of the design. So doing it this way is going to be easier and less expensive, but this wood is fighting me all the way. Just trying to get these pins in here is proving difficult, I think, because the actual box itself is flexing on the inside, so I'm going to have to build something in there to give it some support. So once that's done, I'm going to do some experiments with the kind of leftovers and offcuts of leather I've got, to see how the leather reacts to my pyrography tool. So depending on that, I'll then see what I'm going to do for the next bit. So, and this is all quite well glued down. There are kind of weak spots where they kind of got corners, top corners coming over, coming around the edges here. So what I'm going to do is, once I've finished this to whichever point I get to, I'm going to give it a good rub over with some moisturiser, just to make sure that the leather is in the best condition possible, and then I'm going to varnish it. I was going to use some resin, but I don't think that's going to work particularly well on leather, so I'm going to give it 8 or 9 coats of varnish just to make sure it's set, and that will kind of hold everything together. So that's as far as I've got for now. Okay, so I've got my pyrography tool heating up here, and I've got some of the leftover scales, and I've just stuck them down onto a bit of scrap just so they're solid, not going to go anywhere. I've poked a hole in a couple of them so I can see how the leather kind of reacts with the hole and the burning. So, and I've used pretty much one of each type of leather I've got here, so I can see how it looks on the whole set. So this should be, it feels, yeah, that is hot enough. I don't have a posh one that's got an independent heat adjuster. It's just the machine on this heat, so I don't know how well this is going to do on leather. It came originally with some leather pieces, so I hope it should be fine. So I'm just going to press it in. Ooh. Acrid. Okay, but it's causing the leather to rough up slightly, which may not be ideal. Let's try again. Do a bit faster, maybe. triangles like this. I suspect it will be very similar. Yeah. Okay. Turn that off. Let that cool down a bit. So clearly that's a fail. They're curling up and kind of contracting quite a bit, and it's not. No. The burny bit's kind of rubbing off. So okay. So back to the drawing board. So I'm into the final stages of rebuilding this box. What I did was give the whole thing a really good soaking, well, layering in E45 cream. Again, I would have used a leather feed or something like that, but that's quite expensive and I find it very heavy. So just using E45 as a single layer on here works fabulously. It just gives it back some life and flexibility. Over time it may need another coat, and I'll put a little advisory note inside the box when I sell it, but it is pretty much how I wanted it to be. It's got a little dust build up because I had to have some work done on the concrete step outside, so the dust kind of came everywhere, but that's kind of giving it a bit of age, a bit of patina, so I like that. And inside's finished in nice simple fabric, slightly padded but not excessively so, and the leather just follows all the way around. So this has gone from being what would have been a carved parrot to fairly nice. More than an artist box wouldn't necessarily have a lining in it, so it's a jewellery box, it's whatever you want it to be. So I'm just going to finish putting the latches on the front and I'm done.